Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cyber Resilience in Healthcare webinar. So today we will be diving in. So my name is Brad from Morphisec, and I'm here with Rick, and we're going to dive right into it. So a little bit about us. So Rick, if you could just kind of give you a brief overview of yourself and Omega Systems, that'd be great to start off with.
Sure thing. My name is Rick Mutzel. I'm the manager of technology here at Omega Systems. I've been with the company around 13 years now. We're a managed service provider, managed security provider across most verticals, specializing specifically in healthcare and financial services.
All right, and Brad Laporte, so CMO of Morphisec, and we provide prevention first security, and basically we are stopping advanced threats and nasty things like ransomware now and for good. And we do that from everywhere on the endpoint to the cloud. And really great to have you here, Rick, and we can just
Thank you
kind
for
of
having
dive
me.
into it. We can dive right into what we're going to talk about today. So. The whole webinar will be about 30 to 45 minutes. And if you have any questions throughout the event, the session, please put it in the actual Q&A. I see there's a lot of you that joined today. Thank you so much. And so submit your questions. This was recorded. This will be sent out. We also have an infographic on the top 10 attacks over the last 12 months. And then we also have a healthcare industry cybersecurity checklist that is a great takeaway. So check out for your inbox for those three things: the recording, the infographic, and the checklist. And all that will be emailed to your inbox, and just give us a day to get that to you. So thank you so much. And what are we going to talk about today? So, really we're going to dive into, okay, what's really changed? What's changed, Rick, over the past 12 months? Because I can certainly think of a lot. And, definitely a lot of, high-driven threat examples. I mean, just looking the hockey stick trajectory that just OpenAI and Claude and all the other the LLM and AI models have had. It's quite insane how much things have just taken off over the past 12 months and the past year. And the same things happen on the criminal organization side of the house and that the criminal underground. And it really we have to match. We have to match that and building an actual adaptive cyber resiliency. And then how the best practices are around that, some key takeaways and all those things will be covered in the upcoming minutes. So let's just talk about the state of basically the state of AI and the whole threat landscape. So, we are driven by ransomware, we are driven by speed and sophistication. Like these are the top things. If we talk to any of the CISOs that we're talking to on a daily basis, those are the key things that are really coming up. These are the things that are, now confronting, in an exponential standpoint. And it's just, it's actually accelerating these threats beyond that, and it's impacting the healthcare industry. And we're seeing, more and more of this become, a true epidemic. And um, you know, really what's happening is threat actors are now able, with models, if you just out of the box, Claude, you really have some powerful things. And we've seen now the Mythos model come out, the complementary model with open AI, and really with the Glasswing project and everything else. And like now, you know, we're able to identify vulnerabilities, and the overall time to exploit has gotten down from days down to minutes. And now there's a much stronger need to uh, fortify tools like EDR, endpoint detection response, and traditional protection mechanisms. And there's never been a need for prevention first capabilities and being able to wrap all of that around with services. And really, it's just AI is driving it and having it be more sophisticated and evading. Now, threat actors are able to do it a lot faster, and that time on objective is much shorter. So the need for detection response, as well as the prevention side, has never been stronger. Uh, threat actors are definitely further, really just coming up and organizing. Ransomware as a service is now, becoming mainstream. There's a much lower barrier of entry. So anyone that has access to a keyboard and an internet now can just walk through the front door, unfortunately. And they're living off the land much longer. They're going undetected much longer, and it's really just rising in terms of the high cost of breaches, attacks, and specifically ransomware.
I think
So
that's
I don't know
actually a
if,
really good point with like the barrier to entry has dropped rather dramatically, right? With the rise of, Claude Code, people who aren't necessarily developers or no code can
Mhm.
get a and create some kind of executables. They can go through, they can create something that didn't exist before just by giving an LLM their ideas and having it create it for them. So that barrier to entry has gone from, people think of like state nation actors, like massively funded organizations and groups doing this. And you don't really need to do that anymore. Somebody with the know-how to do the proper prompts in an AI model can have some kind of output that could be harmful for an organization.
Yeah, it's wild, and it really has put organizations on the back foot. And if you look at these stats, this is the new realities.
Yeah, I
So,
think
we have 96. Go ahead.
the, the number of groups, you know, you could call
All
yourself
right.
a group,
All right.
for accreditation, but I think again, a lot of that has also been driven on headwinds that we've also made from the government side of shutting down the larger groups, and they've kind of
Yes.
scattered, right, and created instead of one large threat actor organization, now they're creating individual,
Hmm.
um, more focused organizations. And so while the number has grown, I think the individuals with has also grown, but more focused intent, or individualized intent for the groups that kind of came out of some of those disbursements of the larger groups.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And on the previous slide, there was a mention to the FBI and law enforcement, Interpol, et cetera, breaking up these larger groups, and you have that it's become splintered. So we've had the rise of Scattered Spider, we rebranded Shiny Hunters, and basically a lot of these different lone wolf groups, or even just the different brokers. Now we're seeing 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20 people be involved in part of a hack. So it's not just one group. And then you have different groups that are effectively uh, try mimicking or trying to camouflage themselves in a way that they are posing as a different group and using those types of tactics when really they're this other group. So basically, it's like, oh, it's very clearly they're using these tactics and techniques as part of MITRE attack, and oh well, actually, it ends up being out of so and so country, not this other country, or it's group 1, 2, 3, not group ABC. So we're seeing a large portion of this really just kind of take off, and like this was a big wow statement for me when I saw this. So this is the 0 day clock project that recently was launched, and it really highlights how much this has taken a nosedive of the past couple of years. So I mean, I, I mean, it like 10, 12 years ago, maybe there were like 30 threat actor groups in general that we were tracking back in the day at the company I worked at, and worked on the threat intel side. And even like before that, the federal government, was, you could really count it like on one hand, like the typical folks. And now we're getting into the 3, 4,000 range to the point where it's not even scalable. And like you said, like that kind of lone wolf aspect is really getting it down. I mean, now we're getting down to, projected, we went from one month a year ago when we had our webinar last time, to now days now, and then now we're getting to hours and minutes.
Yep.
This says 2028. I really think, when we do this again in a year or even in 6 months, I think we're gonna be at that 1 minute range. It's and it's turning out to be like really nasty stuff too. So, we're going from forum disruption to market fragmentation, like you stated. We have the AI accelerated attack pipelines. We have these emerging groups that are filling the void, and they're getting nasty. Here are the biggest offenders on the right side. These are the 800-pound gorillas in the market that are really beating their chest and really doing a lot of damage. But it's also like these little, smaller folks that are wreaking havoc as well because it's just totally overrun. And now organizations are getting into a continuous state of an attack, or in some cases, it's continuous state of a data breach, where they're having to deal on multiple different fronts. So for folks that are just not aware of these threat actors, here's your magic quadrant of nasty folks up and to the right. So um, you know Keelan, you have Klopp, you have the gentleman, Akira, so some nasty folks out there, and a lot of them are growing a high structural maturity. They got the sales, they got the market presence, they got the clout, and a lot of it is also structural repositioning.
I think
And
the visual of this is fantastic, by the way.
yes,
And what I try to like when I'm having conversations and they're like threat actors or state nation actors and things like that, I'm like, these are businesses. These are well-run businesses. There's a reason why they're doing this. I mean, some of these um, threat actor groups actually make more money than like entire nations, right? Like
yeah.
they make money and that is the business model. And so they're going to pivot, they're going to constantly be evolving and trying to stay one step ahead because that's how they make money and they do make a lot of money. And so like when we were talking a year ago, we started trying to tell people like ransomware is not going to be the new metric, right? That is showing your hand that you've already been in the environment. Like that's the last step at this point. Exfiltration of the data is what they want because people have good
Hmm.
backups. People can restore now. It's more about the regulatory environment catching up. So like in healthcare, HIPAA, and the financial sector, you have SEC. And so these regulations are catching up with if the data is exfiltrated, what is the impact of that to your consumers? Are they consuming healthcare services? Are they consuming financial services from you? And as these regulations catch up, and you're having to do these breach notifications, you're losing confidence in your customers as a business, but also now there's additional fines being levied against these things. And the threat actors know that. Nobody wants that to happen. Nobody wants to send breach notification. And so are you going to pay the ransom to keep you out of the news?
Hmm.
You're probably going to have to report it anyway if a breach happens, right? So if you're beholden to these 3 or 4 letter agencies, right, we're finally catching up on the regulatory side of things with having to let people know if their information has been impacted. And so that's a black eye as an organization for reputation. And so as backups have and people aren't paying for the actual ransomware, the encryption of your data, because you have it. So now what do? You exfiltrate the data. So it doesn't matter if you can restore it. We already have your information, and there's a whole nother industry of professionals that negotiate with the threat actor groups on like, here's how much we want for it. And there's days and
Hmm.
weeks of going back and forth and be like, okay, well, we think that's too much. Give us proof of life, right? That you actually have our information, and they'll provide it, right? And going back and forth and negotiating a price for the ransom not to leak that information, whether you trust them or not, right? Again, in your magic quadrant here, it almost equates to the trustworthiness of that
It
group
is.
again, right? Like
Market
they're in the
leaders.
business, they're market leaders, right? I'm not going to say they're always, but they want to hold to that because again, if they leak that information after you've paid the ransom, well, then no one's going to pay the ransom, right? It's a crazy business model. I'll say that.
Yeah. I mean, after hearing you talk, Rick, I think we picked the wrong career choice. I think we should have gone on the dark side of the forest instead of the light side. So no, I like not being in jail and doing
That's
good
always a
things.
plus.
Yeah. So, um, and just kind of looking at some recent incidents that we've seen, out in the wild, really. So, incident number one was black bite, just showing you exactly like how nasty this can be. This was a double extortion ransomware as a service. So, this group is a ransomware as a service. They are a group that's targeting critical infrastructure and manufacturing. So combining that with, exfiltration. So, this has an impact on the supply chain for healthcare, and producing all of the different capabilities and things that we need to use as part of the industry. And they had a very sophisticated t technique with memory injection, and it evaded EDR and specifically EDR's behavioral analysis engine. So this was really just leveraging legitimate binaries, Windows binaries, excuse me, to blend in with normal activity. And under normal circumstances, it wouldn't have been detected. So by having the morphing technology, the randomization of the memory layouts, it basically the injected payload was not able to hit the target, and so the large number of clients that we had that uh, were not impacted by this. So this is a huge miss on behalf of our market leaders here. The gentleman, incident two, the gentleman, how gentlemanly of them. They've been around for about a year now since our last webinar, and they're going up and to the right. They're no longer visionaries. They're getting into the leaders, and they had fileless execution using PowerShell for this, and they use credential harvesting, which is becoming more and more prevalent over the past 2-3 years. And then before they had the lateral movement, they tried to go into the domain controllers and the backup systems and the crown jewels. So the reflective loader found no stable memory footprint, and credential harvesting never actually initiated. So it was all thwarted, but that was their intent. So the lateral movement was blocked, right from the first hop. And that's why it's so important. We always talk about the blast radius and how impact that is, because it's having that multi-layered approach to being able to stop these sophisticated attacks, so they can't actually hit the target. They might have a swing and a miss, but at the end of the day, you got to protect the face. So, this is how the modern ransomware attacks are structured, going through all of that. So a large portion of it, or the initial part of it, is discovery, the lateral movement, as we kind of highlighted in the past examples, having defense evasion, at that point, and then exfiltration, like you stated. So, also just, these are the key elements, and trying to mitigate this. You have to mitigate it across each of the different layers and the entire life cycle, all the way from the early stages of reconnaissance, all the way down to the actual impact and stopping that data exfiltration, and being able to recover and get to that cleaner state is all very critical.
And I think that's
So.
actually a really good point of on the, how they're structured in that these are different components within your security program, right?
Mhm,
Each one of these things is going to be potentially a different tool set. It's going to be a different application, a different piece of hardware, right? That can detect, stop, mitigate each one of these areas. And something you said was, defense in depth and defense in breadth, right? And so
mhm,
no, you shouldn't rely on any one single component of your security program to be that end all be all. Nothing is
mhm,
infallible. Nothing is 100%. And if somebody's telling you, we're 100% effective, I would urge you to probably, look at another vendor because you can't speak in indefinites, especially in the security world, right? And so having the multiple layers, on the discovery side, you're looking at network traffic, you're looking at reconnaissance, having honeypots, those kinds of things out on your network to kind of get that initial discovery phase and being able to shut it down wherever that may be. And same thing, lateral movement. That's where we're moving more towards detecting things moving laterally, where AMTD, traditional EDRs, kind of come into play there as well. And so stopping it early is really your best and your strongest foot from a security perspective.
Yeah. So if I bring it all together, thank you very much. The core themes, if I just broke it down to five different themes across what we just talked about in the first section, acceleration of the attack timelines. So it's AI has significantly reduced the time that it takes to breach. We're now getting down into minutes. The sophistication, the increased sophistication in evasion techniques. So AI-enabled tools have been able to allow attackers to evade traditional methods. It really requires fortifying EDR with services, with prevention first capabilities and preemptive capabilities, like a automated moving target defense. And then really they're adopting techniques like polymorphic payloads, memory injection, living off the land, and using more diverse tools that we've never seen before, novel tools and techniques. Um, Third is scaling through automation and ransomware as a service models. So being able to have those models expanded, lowering the overall skill set and barrier to entry, like we talked about. The AI tools are automating reconnaissance, the credential theft, all those earlier stages, even lateral movement, and giving, even novice attackers, the ability to level up to a two, three, four level threat actor. And then four is the market fragmentation and being able to, to have multiple, the scattered spider type technique and more and more people, the lone wolf, taking down these major forums like Ramp and other splintering groups. That just breaks it up into smaller, more agile players like Nova Ransomware as a Service and the Gentleman. And then five is the adversarial use of AI defense knowledge. So threat actors are actively studying our techniques as defenses. They're building their AI driven exploits that can bypass them. They're traditionally being one step ahead. And the defensive AI, they're able to adapt and maneuver these different approaches. So it really requires you to be adaptive and come up with different ways. So some of the top, I'll shift into the next section, was just identifying a couple other use cases, and just showing kind of how really how things are impacting your neighbors and really the folks that are on here. So we actually did a 2 year look back. So one of them was PIH Healthcare. You know, really getting into the disruption of operations across all of the branches. That this impacted over 3 million patients, and really the root cause was that it went after outdated endpoint security systems across the hospital network. So, making sure that you have virtual patching, you have hardening, and you are keeping up with updating your systems is absolutely paramount. Um, SimonNet, the imaging breach, so that's impacted 1.27 million patient records, so a large amount. That was the beginning of last year. And they infiltrated through the lack of segmentation between the diagnostic servers and the core IT service. So network isolation is absolutely paramount as well. So being able to segregate that, and having those critical systems, so when there is lateral movement and they do establish a beachhead, they're able to effectively move, um, and they're not able to move forward, and you're able to mitigate that blast radius. And
In
obviously
healthcare,
having,
especially the network segmentation part is
Mhm.
is critical. There's always going to be something that you can't update or bring to current, or right, like there's a machine running on $1 million imaging machine, right? And that has to run
Hmm.
on Windows XP. We run into this all the time, right? We're not
Yes.
the juice isn't worth the squeeze of, updating that one workstation, but that is a target, right? And so properly segmenting your network in those areas to mitigate or reduce compromise on those specific things is key. All the Internet of Medical Devices is a thing now. Like that's a whole category of, all these connected devices that are, moving around a hospital, right? And having those specifically quarantined, networked, segmented, so that, if one piece is affected, it doesn't affect the entire network and your entire
Hmm.
infrastructure.
Yeah, and a lot of systems are running off Windows XP, embedded Windows,
Mhm.
or any kind of legacy Windows, and even on the server side, older versions of Windows Server. But there's also the Linux side too. So right now, a few days ago, there was a high critical vulnerability known as copy fail, and as part of this, virtually every Linux distribution running kernel versions since 2017 was vulnerable. So if you're not able to patch those systems, or you're stuck, initially we didn't have a patch, but now there is a patch for it. But it's such a driving need to have preemptive cyber defense and being able to have virtual patching and hardening. You just can't keep up with these types of things. I mean, literally having every Linux distribution be exposed. I mean, if you haven't patched that, please immediately following this webinar, go patch, or get a solution in place ASAP. Just gonna dig through a couple more of these. Um, with this particular one, another one where it was 1.9 million. This is another scenario where they had weak, they weren't doing the basics right. They had weak internal security practices, insufficient patch management, reoccurring over and over again. Um, the McLaren Care Group, another scenario where patients' files encrypted by ransomware. So delaying treatment, which has a serious physical aspect to that. So who knows what the second and third order effects are for that? And this was due to insider threats, poor logging that allowed attackers to basically exfiltrate admin credentials. So the whole credential account takeover. Covenant. This was another huge, huge data breach from May 20, last year. A year ago, I can't believe it's May. A year ago. What year is it? This affected almost 500,000 patients. And again, this is insufficient monitoring of the EMR servers. Allowing entry points for malware injection. I mean, the key lesson is being able to implement defenses against that. Um, DaVita Labs, almost 3 million patient records. Um, Phishing credentials exploited to infiltrate lab environments housing that personal data. So another area where phishing and credentials and all of that. So some reoccurring elements. The Dutch chips off. We had 70% of the Dutch hospitals disrupted. Just think of that. Almost three-fourths of the whole country's hospitals were disrupted by this. Once again, vulnerabilities, and having critical systems not segmented and uh, critical assets being protected and all that being able to be access to cloud resources, which is a big no-no. Aflac, another major one, that was June of last year, and 22, almost 23 million patient records, with 14 million out of the US alone. It's one of the largest healthcare breach of the year. And this was another exploitation of vulnerabilities. And two more, we have 25 million patient records with conduit, I think. Anyways, the third party vendor, the third party vendor, there's a third party for a third party vendor item. So we're making sure you're looking at your supply chain, your third party partnerships. and making sure that you have the proper security assessments. And last but not least, the signature healthcare breach, which is not too long ago, which forced ambulances to be diverted, cancellations of critical cancer treatment uh, facilities and basically pharmacies. So, the another one where the attack leveraged vulnerabilities in systems and unsupported software. So really what it breaks down to, kind of like the core themes here is gotta patch, gotta have virtual patching, gotta have preemptive cyber defense, gotta have services to help you out. The second one is exploitation of system gaps, so identifying those gaps, pressure testing them, and making sure that your overall attack surface and the exposure that you have, the threat exposure that you have, is the minimal attack surface possible. Having a plan or mitigations against double and triple extortion ransomware attacks. Um, the
I think
third
another
party,
thing,
go
like when
ahead.
we look at like these 10 individual breaches, and right before this, we talked about advanced AI attacks and all this fancy new technology coming down, and it's, we're predicting under a minute from detection to, exploit. We just looked at 10 different huge breaches. All could be prevented by basic cyber hygiene and having a security program. So we're talking like, how do we protect against AI leveraged attacks and everything? An industry as a whole, I think we still need to cover all the basic foundational security metrics and let MFA on every login, right? Having an
Hmm.
actual vulnerability management program, like to find these things. Like we have a patching program, but are we validating that the patch is actually applied, or did, it failed and it rolled back and hasn't actually patched in 9 months, right? Um, I think some of the new proposes to the new security model for HIPAA are great. Like, actually having a requirement for vulnerability management is a great thing. But also, it's going to take time, money, and resources to staff uh, a really good vulnerability management program. Does take time and it takes effort and it takes staffing to do. So again, just identity protecting identity and protecting against vulnerabilities are just fundamental items in a security practice that clearly weren't being implemented to their fullest extent in almost all of these examples, and a little bit now could have prevented these things, and really we saw impacted patient care, right? And so we want to try to prevent that.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely hit the nail on the head. So, um, just to wrap up this section, third-party risks, vendor risks, supply chain risks, insider threats, phishing for sure, credential thefts, account takeovers, and the overall crux is need for proactive security measures, having that multi-layered approach. So this is a good slide to show across our approach to anti-ransomware assurance, which basically controls coverage across the entire attack life cycle. So, looking across pre-attack, execution, credentials, discovery, the impact, and post-impact, right? The whole blast radius. And then across all of that, you have exposure management, so reducing your overall attack surface, making yourself a harder target. Infiltration, being able to overall prevent things like runtime memory protection, being able to prevent privilege escalation protection, credentials, the hacking tools, the AI-driven tools, and really just preventing the exfiltration protection. And in the event that they are able to establish a beachhead, being able to prevent tamper protection of the security tools that you have, being able to have encryption protection so they can't encrypt files or destroy files, which is the wiping protection as well. And then, yeah, recovery, which is okay, in the event that some systems are compromised, being able to have the actual recovery itself, but doing forensics on that recovery. So it's not just doing a backup recovery or recovering that system. is actually doing the forensics, getting that forensics data so you can do a postmortem analysis and help on the incident response side, and doing the actual data recovery itself. And then last but not least, last month we launched adaptive AI defense. And with this, having AI usage control, having command dashboards, having exposure assistance, and basically having that co-pilot alongside, before, during, and after an incident to, basically level up your team so you can have a level one analyst, have this, or even a novice, have, a much higher level 1 through 3 level expertise within the event that's happening, and then layering in Omega services throughout, right? So, absolutely must have type stuff. So with that said, let's kind of wrap things up with some key takeaways. So Rick, I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, again, being reactive is not really the world we live in anymore. So as
Hmm.
proactive as your budget will allow, and and that's really the key factor, and so talking to the C-suite, talking to the board about getting funds allocated to be as proactive as possible. And those funds are used for creating that multi-layer security that we've been talking about. So it used to be, I have antivirus and I have a firewall. That's probably not going to be enough anymore. We live in a world where it's no longer, if we get compromised, it's when we get compromised and what do we do and how do we react to that. And so having those multiple layers, no single points of failure in your security helps with that, limiting the blast radius. Having those recovery solutions, again, pivoting away from just doing recovery, but can we recover to another site, another area? Can people go work
Hmm.
from home? Can we work offline for a period of time, especially in healthcare? Or without access to patient record files, like what can we do, and trying to plan for that. Um, Employees are always and still are going to be the low-hanging fruit in the attack chain. Those are the easiest targets for compromise. They own the identity of their accounts, and so multi-factor authentication on everything. But having phishing resistant multi-factor authentication is kind of the next level on top of that. So just having proper employee training, not only just from security, but again for in healthcare, having people properly trained on HIPAA. If you see something, say something, all those kinds of areas. And then that security posture being continuously audited. That is going to be one of the new proposed requirements of kind of continuous management of your security posture. So having
Hmm.
eyes on logs when alerts come in, being able to react to that, and notifying people. And that's going to change, especially in the world of AI, where you know
Oh
we saw
yeah.
it in the metrics, right? We went from 2.3 years down to 1 hour at this point, right? And so that real continuous is really going to be the key as we move forward.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. So, yeah, really it just comes down to value and efficiency. So being able to go from data mining into the decision making, being able to have that 90% plus reduction in time to remediate, being able to eliminate dashboard fatigue and have your system just working for you. So if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you know that that all of the Linux distributions are since 2017 are now exposed, and that you're protected because you have a truly fortified, hardened system and the right, best practices and capabilities in place, so it mitigates that impact. And the security return on investment isn't just about the money. It's not just about the revenue. It's about the loss avoidance as well. So being able to reduce the overall downtime, have those recovery costs reduced or eliminated completely, which is ideal. And then incidents are being prevented, and overall, just your risk exposure goes down significantly because it only takes one bad situation to impact your reputation forever. Not to mention all the other secondary and tertiary effects. I think everybody's either known someone that's been in an emergency situation and they need an ambulance at their house as soon as humanly possible. So in the event that someone can't get to the hospital, I mean, nothing really gets worse than that. So with that said, we do have a couple minutes for a couple questions. And so let me pull that up. Okie dokie. One sec, let me go through them. All right. So, yeah, the first question is what specific AI-driven ransomware trends have emerged in the last year? I mean, this was earlier in the call, when this question was asked. And so, Rick, I don't know if there's anything that you want to just call a recap on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing from a trend in that specifically is going to be that timeline. I mean, that's huge, right? We talked about the time to breach, especially with like Mythos as a prime example of that. Like a large language
Hmm.
model being able to look at a code base, find the vulnerabilities, and write an exploit like all in one process and hand over that to an individual is I think a trend that we're going to see is that exact automation from a threat actor perspective, doing more with less. And then conversely, on the white hat side of things, trying to combat that using large language models to find the proverbial needle in the haystack, right? Going, sifting through millions of logs and finding something. I think large language models are very adept at doing that. And so, on both sides of the fence, I really see AI driving good and bad, and it's going to be a cat and mouse game as always on who's going to iterate the fastest and the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And organizations really, it benefits from some adopting those preventative defenses, the preemptive cyber defense and automated moving target defense, and being able to be on really on the forward thinking of things. So the second question that I have is how can healthcare organizations, what are some additional best practices against specifically insider threats? We touched on that, but we didn't really go into significant detail. But especially with some of the incidents in the top 10 breaches that we talked about that had them. So I guess there's a lot more interest on the insider threats up front.
I mean, least privilege model should always be followed. Again, limiting that blast radius. So you
Hmm.
should only have access to what you need access to complete your job functions. And so if an identity is compromised or an account is compromised, a machine is compromised, it only has access to just what it needs to have access to. And so that's number one. It sounds easy to do, but actually, when you're in the workforce and like have somebody that's doing dual roles and things, that the lines get blurred. But as much as possible, least privilege and dynamically applied using single sign-on or those kinds of integrations with your identity source and having that automatically provision out to your third, fourth party tools. That's huge.
Hmm.
And trying to help identify that. I mean, anecdotally, I just went to the doctor's office, um, and right, and the cart with your laptop on it, and it was great because I'm a technology guy. I'm watching how this whole process works, right? And they badge in, and we go through the intake, and they're doing the information, and then they just kind of like left, and I'm sitting there staring at a screen with that login information on it. And they must have been just close enough, right, that it didn't automatically log them out. And so I was like, maybe I should say something.
Hmm.
But again, the base foundation of that is again getting multi-factor authentication on everything, limiting the scope of access as much as possible, and then auditing that all the time. And so having the logs, having some kind of UEBA, so behavior analytics going on. So when something unfamiliar for an account or a machine changes, and that's being detected in the logs, having that raise an alert to somebody so that an investigation or an automation, even better, can occur in those scenarios until an investigation can occur.
Hmm. All right. So I think we have time for one more. We got a minute left. So I'm going to jump to the next question. I'm going to skip three. I'm going to go to four here because we already addressed three, which was just main lessons from the top healthcare ransomware attacks. We already covered that. But the next one is how can AI-powered tools assist in responding to zero-day vulnerabilities, as noted in some of the incidents, and then in parentheses, they call out signature healthcare attack.
Yeah, I mean, these are going to be specific to what we're seeing as like the supply chain kind of compromises. And especially as we're going into using like Claude code and things like that to write code, and they're pulling third-party packages in, and you're just like blindly accepting this and like, yeah, this looks great. Hey, it works, right? And so having that third party of the supply chain with you know, DLL injections or living off of trusted signed executables, things like, and there's a reason why we're on this webinar right now. Like we trust Morphisec for doing those kinds of things, right? Yeah, yeah, very well. We've seen this time and time again. EDR evasion, and or just this is brand new. No one's ever seen this. Somebody just created this technique. Morphisec has done a phenomenal job in catching those. It's like our last line of defense, right? It's made it through all the other layers of our security program, and we use Morphisec in addition to EDR to be able to catch those
Hmm.
0-day things that we just don't know about, or somebody has pivoted to something new, something's doing something that's it looks odd, and so Morphisec has done a fantastic job at finding and detecting those things and shutting them
Uh,
down, right? And really stopping a full breach at the endpoint.
yeah. Well, one of my favorite sayings is teamwork makes the dream work. So,
Absolutely.
Omega combined with Morphisec is absolutely the perfect solution. So, Um, thank you so much, Rick. Really appreciate it. Everyone on the
Absolutely.
call, thank you for joining. Please stay in touch, reach out to us, get a personalized one-on-one demo and review of our current capabilities and new capabilities. So reach out to us, keep in touch. We will be sending out the recording, we'll be sending out the infographic, and we'll be sending out the checklist. And we'll have a summary blog on everything that we talked about today. So certainly check in next time. So, Rick, this was my favorite webinar in the last 12 months since the last time we
Oh,
did this.
fantastic.
So, don't tell anyone else that, but I do mean it. So, it's always a pleasure working with you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.